Okay guys, right, in the sort of bold tradition of kicking off with new assignments when we haven't finished old ones, what we're going to do is just start looking at assignment D, because this is one you can do at home. At least you can make a start on it at home, and then when we come back in sort of next year and start getting back in the lab and doing the practical, we can sort of get that done then. So what is assignment D? Well, basically, how am I doing, right? So that's really, it's a bit about being a bit reflective over how you've been over the last couple of years in terms of your practical skills and all the rest of it. So what actually is how am I doing? This is one of the most nebulous ones to do. It's entirely written, and it's entirely about your opinion and justifying that opinion of yourself. So there's no practical element to this at all. However, you need to draw on your practical experiences to do it. So what do you need to be able to do for this assignment? Well, one, you need to be able to summarise your key personal competencies developed in relation to scientific skills undertaken. 2, you need to be able to analyse the skills developed and suggest improvements to your own practice. And then 3, you need to evaluate your scientific skills in terms of potential for future progression. So that's the task. Right, what's the scenario? Because it's obviously applied science, there's always a scenario. So you are a newly appointed technical assistant at a large chemical plant. In order to complete your induction period and progress within the company, you have to review and evaluate your performance of the procedures and techniques that you've been involved in so far. That's titration, colorimetry, calorimetry and chromatography. Bear in mind at this stage you've only done 2 of those. You haven't done the calorimetry stuff, you haven't done the chromatography stuff. So you cannot complete this task now. However, you can make a good start on it and treat it like a working document. Treat it like something you're going to come back to and keep adding to over the course of the next year. So just bear that in mind, right? If we get a lot of this done now, it just means that we've sort of broken the back of it for next year. You need to identify the key practical and personal competences you've shown whilst developing and using those skills, and you must evaluate your own performance, interpersonal skills and professional practice. The report you produce will be assessed by a senior technician. No, it won't. I'm going to mark it. So, what's the task? Task 1, draw on feedback from peers and teachers and industry. Won't get any from industry. To analyse and evaluate the strengths and weaknesses in your performance and skills in relation to your potential for future progression. So you need to produce a report summarising and evaluating your performance and skill development across all the practical work in this unit, including drawing on examples of skills developed in colorimetry, titration, calorimetry and chromatography in this unit, and how they can be transferred for use in other units. Right, and there's a bunch of bullet points there, which I'm not going to read, we'll come back to in a minute. Right, now, I can already feel the tension, because nobody likes to write about themselves, and particularly, we don't like to write about our strengths. If I asked you now to write a list of 5 weaknesses and 5 strengths, you'll find 5 weaknesses quite easy to do, you'll struggle writing 5 strengths. That's not because you're not good at things, it's just we don't like to boast. It's an intrinsic British thing. So that's going to be the hard part of this, is thinking about what you are good at, blowing your own trumpet, right? And you have to get used to it because it's an important life skill. And you're going to need to talk about how you are good at all of those bullet points, which I'll come back to in a second. So, what are you going to do what are you going to produce? You're going to produce a report which focuses on the evaluation of your performance and skill development across all scientific procedures and techniques carried out in learning aims A, B and C. So the titration, the colorimetry, the calorimetry and the chromatography. Evaluate your strengths and weaknesses in each key area. You could include photographic or video evidence of your skills and peer review of your abilities and results in your report. So you could ask witnesses to write things about you. You don't have to. You could have yourself videoed doing some of the practical. You don't have to. You could have photographs, and I strongly suggest you do have a couple of photographs of things like chromatography and stuff. Again, you don't have to. So you need to basically write a Word document with that in mind. So this is a horrible task, and I know already people are feeling a bit nervous about it, so this is how I would tackle it, right? For a pass, you need to identify areas of scientific skills developed in relation to the learning aims. You should draw on your scientific skills you've previously acquired and use them to illustrate the transferability and development of skills. Right, this is what the mark scheme says. For a merit, you need to make judgments on your skill development and level in relation to the peer group. You need to recognise the improvements that need to be made and how they will take steps to achieve them. And for distinction, you need to draw upon all areas of practical work carried out to critically reflect on strengths and weaknesses of your own performance and skill development, drawing on feedback, for example, from peers, from teachers and industry. Right, you've had a lot of feedback from me, so you can use that. You could talk to your peers about what they think you've developed and what you could use that. Draw on others' feedback is crucial for developing balanced progression goals. That's what the mark scheme says. You can see how much fun that is to mark because it's quite nebulous. So this is what I intend you need to do. Right, to get started, number one, I would get a Word document and I would copy and paste those skills into it. Right, just copy and paste that directly from the task into a Word document. What you need to do is demonstrate you've met every single one of those with examples. So think of an occasion when you've done something from the list, and if you've done more than one thing, list more than one thing. So this is literally at this point just a great big bullet pointed list. It's not an assignment yet, but it's collating all of that information. Right, so let's think about some examples. Have you communicated and cooperated with others in the workplace? Have you worked as a team? Yes, you've worked together doing things like the titration and the colorimetry, where some of you made the stock solutions, some of you tested the stock solutions, you then communicated with each other and cooperated as part of a team. There's an example. Have you accepted responsibility for the quality of your own work? Well, have you worked independently on each of these tasks? Have you then sought feedback? Have you made sure that, for example, with your calorimetry experiment, you've designed it based on literature, based on having done a bit of research? Yes, you have. That's a good example of that. Have you exhibited behaviour for safe and effective working in science? Yeah, you've done tons of practical. How many accidents have you had? Have you worn safety glasses all the way through? Have you followed standard lab safety procedures? Okay, so and that can go in here, applying safe working practices and behaviour. Yeah, you've worked safely, talk about it. Some of these are more difficult. For example, recognising problems and applying appropriate scientific methods to identify causes and achieve solutions. You probably haven't done a lot of that yet, but that's because you haven't done chromatography and you haven't seen how bad some of the chromatograms are going to be. So you can talk about then, in that evaluation, when you talk about using different solvents or different substrates or whatever, then you can drop that in. So quite a lot of these are, sort of look quite difficult, but actually they really are. Have you given and received effective feedback on your performance in relation to peers? No, but we haven't analysed each other's cooling curves yet, so that's going to tick that box. So some of these you'll find easy to do, some of them you'll find difficult, but try to list as many examples as you can for each. Think about how you've improved your skill in that area based on feedback from me or from your peers, and do talk to your peers about this when we're back in. And an example of this is titrations. Right, frankly, at the start we were a little bit pants on titrations, and I know that because Mrs. Evans came in to observe, and titration wasn't really a strong point. But you got better at it. You improved. You were safer. You were more switched on. You understood the importance of the meniscus being at eye level, and the base of the meniscus being on the line, and all that stuff. Right, you have improved, so you can say that you've improved. And then think about how this skill could be of use to you in a future career or studies, and why. So, to do well in this assignment, right, pass, you need to identify where you've met all of those criteria. Give an example, right, that's the pass thing. Give an example of where you've done it. For merit, think about for each of those, or as many of those as you can, where you've improved, how you've improved, how you know you've improved. It might be because you know you've done better. It might be you ask somebody else and they tell you you've done better. It could be because I've told you you've done better. Okay? How have you got better at this over time? Are you more confident in being in a lab? Are you better at doing referencing than you were at the start? Okay, in your first assignment your referencing was a bit pants. Now you're all over doing Vancouver referencing and the numbers and all the rest of it. Right? And then for the distinction, think about how you could improve that skill or multiple use it in a future career. So it doesn't have to be your future career, but it could be. For example, let's say you want to go on and do physiotherapy. You could argue that actually knowing how to work safely and following instructions is really important in the future in physiotherapy, because Obviously, if you're not following standard procedures, you could damage somebody. You need to have a good working knowledge of the muscles, so you don't do things to them that are not sort of current practice. You could talk about identifying, organising, using resources effectively. For example, if you become a research chemist later on, you need to be able to plan experiments, but also work out where to get the chemicals from. Stuff like that. So it's all about making sure that you can come up with as much of that as possible. For each bullet point, ideally, think of when you've done it, think of how you know you have done it, and more importantly, how you have improved it based on feedback. And then 3, think of a future career where it would be useful, where that's a useful transferable skill, and why. Okay, that's the really difficult bit. Okay, this is not the easiest of assignments. We're starting it now, we ain't going to finish it now. This is a working document. Right, you will not finish this until you've finished all of the practical work. But whilst we're sat at home, this is a computer job. And this is a computer job that you're already a third of the way through the practical for, so you can make a good start. If you can't do all of them, that's fine. But if you've got that working document with all those bullet points in and spaces underneath, and you've made a few notes underneath each one, that's ideal. You could do it as a spider chart with each of those bullet points on, and have things coming off and all the rest of it. Right, this is not an assignment yet. It's a working document. It's a big list of things you've done, things of how you've improved on the things you've done, where you might use that in the future. Right, make a start now. That's what we're going to be doing really now until the end of this term. Because we can't do much else now until we're back in the lab doing practical stuff. So make a start. You will find this difficult, I imagine, because everybody does. I would hate having to do this. I'm great in a practical environment, but when it comes to doing stuff like this is much more challenging, because this is all about identifying your strengths and your weaknesses. And if you can identify a weakness and say how you improve that weakness, spot on. But identifying strengths and say how you know the strengths is more challenging, but you need to do it. So, any questions, comments, queries or concerns, you know how to find me. Just email me at the usual address. But otherwise, guys, have fun with this, or at least make a start on this, and I will see you all soon. Take care.